In this episode, we go undercover to discover a 23-year-old mother of 2 boys. She has an affair with another man and her stepfather. The other man states he doesn't want to be with her because he doesn't want kids. What is a girl to do? So she murders her kids. And if that's not enough for you, once she goes to prison, she purposely has sex with a couple of prison guards just to get them fired. Real people, true story, uncovered.
Susan Smith was a 23-year-old mother of 2 young boys, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alex. At the time, she was married to David Smith. To understand Susan's life, it is important to look back at her troubled childhood. Her early years were marked by profound trauma. She lost her father to suicide and later endured sexual abuse at the hands of her stepfather. To escape her pain, Susan attempted suicide multiple times throughout her youth. She was eventually diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, a condition that compounded her emotional struggles and instability as she entered adulthood. Susan Smith was, as the king of pop, Michael Jackson would say it, a PYT. Pretty young thing. She was young, loved to have fun, and full of life. But due to her trauma, maybe, she was full of too much life. When Susan met David Smith, it seemed like a match made in heaven. The two were inseparable, young, carefree, and caught up in the rush of first love. And, as many young couples do, they decided to take the next step: marriage. Not long after, Susan gave birth to their first son, Michael. For a time, it seemed as though life was settling into a picture-perfect family portrait. But beneath the surface, things weren't so perfect. Susan's old patterns began to re-emerge, and soon rumors of infidelity circulated. It has been said she even rekindled a troubling relationship from her past with her stepfather. David suspected Susan was being unfaithful, but in truth, their marriage was strained on both sides. He, too, was said to be doing some extracurricular activities outside the marriage. Eventually, the tension drove them apart, and the couple separated. But then, a twist. Susan discovered she was pregnant again. She told David, and together they made the choice to reconcile. Their second son, Alex, was born. For a moment, hope returned. Yet good times rarely lasted long in Susan's world. Unhappy in her marriage, she soon met Tom Finley, a wealthy, attractive man who swept her off her feet. Susan fell hard, imagining a future with him, and began an affair. But Tom Finley didn't share her dreams. While Susan envisioned marriage, Tom was clear. He wanted no part of raising children, especially children who weren't his own. In a detailed letter, he spelled it out. There would be no marriage, no future together, not with 2 young boys in the picture. And for Susan Smith, those words would become the spark that set a tragedy in motion. With pain and anguish in her heart, she could not believe what she was reading. Marrying Tom would make all her problems and issues go away. She loved his family. She loved his lifestyle. And most importantly, she loved him. If it wasn't for these kids, I could have married Tom Finley. There must be something I can do, she thought. October 25th was the kind of night where the chill seemed to seep into the bones of Union, South Carolina. The small town was still. The only sounds were crickets and the occasional barking dog. No one could have imagined that, within hours, This quiet place would become the stage for one of America's most infamous crimes. The 23-year-old mother set out for a late-night drive. The two young boys were strapped in their car seats. Susan drives to John D. Long Lake. Was she just driving around, or did she have a plan? While driving along the lake, she notices the boat ramp. She stops. She looks. She starts thinking, what if? Maybe I... The boys were too young, too innocent to understand what Mommy was thinking. Without thinking any deeper, she grips the steering wheel tight. Her eyes blank only once, and she just does it. Susan presses onto the accelerator, opens her car door, gets out, and watches the car roll down the ramp of John D. Long Lake. The Mazda slid silently into the water, headlights glowing like two distant stars sinking beneath the surface. A tragedy that would shock the nation. When Susan ran to police, hysterical and gasping for breath, she told a story that would terrify every parent in America. A black man had carjacked her vehicle, driving off with her babies inside. News traveled fast. Within hours, CNN, ABC, NBC, and every news outlet in the country had Susan's tear-streaked face plastered on their broadcasts.
I want to say to my babies that your mama loves you so much.
She pleaded on live television, "I just want my babies back." The world wept with her.
Stuff like that don't happen here. It's just...
Did you believe it?
Yeah.
Candles were lit. Prayer circles were held. Neighbors held vigils. Even President Bill Clinton said he was praying for Michael and Alex. But there was one small problem. The story wasn't true. Investigators quickly realized that something was off. Susan's story changed with every retelling. She couldn't remember key details.
At this point, based on what happened last night, do you know anything better about it now than you did last night?
No. They've got people everywhere looking for them. You can hear the helicopters are there, but they haven't seen anything, and it's crazy. And it's been since 9 o'clock last night, and I really thought that when it got daylight they would find them just in a heartbeat, but I hadn't.
The roads didn't match her description, and when detectives checked security tapes, there was no mysterious carjacker anywhere in sight. Meanwhile, the public watched as Susan cried on camera, sometimes with convincing sobs, other times as if she were auditioning for a soap opera. Detectives later admitted they could tell when her tears were real and when she was faking. The suspense grew. 9 days later, Susan finally broke. Sitting in a small interrogation room, head bowed, she confessed. She had let the car roll into the lake with her children strapped inside.
Susan Smith has been arrested and will be charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of her children.
Detectives rushed to the water. Divers found the Mazda submerged, the bodies of Michael and Alex still strapped in their car seats. The sight shook even the most hardened officers to their core. America, too, was shattered. The story flipped from sympathy to outrage overnight. This wasn't a mother who had lost her children. This was a mother who had murdered them. When Susan went to trial, the courtroom was packed. Prosecutors painted her as a selfish woman who drowned her children to chase a man. The defense argued that she was mentally ill, battling depression, childhood trauma, and sexual abuse. The jury wasn't swayed. They convicted her of murder, sentencing her to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. The crime horrified the nation. A young mother drowning her 2 young sons. Today, a jury in Union, South Carolina, decided the town has had enough death. The jurors, 9 men and 3 women, voted to spare the life of Susan Smith. Correspondent Randall Pinkston was in the courtroom for the sentencing.
It was a unanimous verdict for murdering her sons, life in prison for Susan Smith, not the death penalty prosecutor Tommy Pope had requested.
We presented the case we had. We presented the case that we felt called for this trial and this penalty, and we accept the jury's verdict.
As the verdict was read, Susan Smith breathed a sigh of relief.
Now, here's where the story gets a little darkly humorous. Susan Smith didn't suddenly turn into a model prisoner. Far from it. In prison, she became notorious for her charming games. She flirted with guards, manipulated them, and, according to reports, managed to bend the rules in ways that made the warden grind his teeth. While the official record is filled with disciplinary notes, the unofficial whispers told of Susan always finding ways to get attention. Inmates joked that Susan didn't need cable TV, she was the entertainment. Whether she was stirring drama in the cafeteria or cozying up to someone who could smuggle her contraband, she kept life in prison anything but dull. While in prison, Susan wasn't getting many visitors. She felt if she was in prison closer to her hometown, her family could come visit her. Susan was at the Camille Griffin Graham Correctional Institution, but if she could be transferred to the Leith Correctional Institution, she would be closer to home. Prison captain Alfred Rowe stated that she had a plan to seduce and have sex with prison guards, then report it to prison administration, in the hopes she would be transferred. Alfred Rowe stated Susan became very friendly with him, striking up conversations and being flirtatious. Alfred admits he welcomed her advances, mainly because she was young and attractive, and his marital situation at home wasn't the best. One day, Captain Alfred Rowe was talking in an office, and Susan offered to give him oral sex. He gladly accepted. Alfred states that was the only sexual encounter he had with Susan. Reports also state Susan had sexual relationship with 50-year-old prison guard Houston Cagle. Well, if you know Susan by now, you know there were many more encounters. After a thorough investigation, inmate Susan Smith had sex with 4 other guards, and one was with a woman. Well now. Captain Alfred Rowe confessed to having oral sex with an inmate and was sentenced to 5 years probation. Guard Houston Cagle later pleaded guilty for having sex with an inmate and spent 3 months in prison. Susan's plan was executed perfectly, and she had a little sexual fun in the midst of it all. As a result of these incidents, she was transferred to the Leith Correctional Institution, which was closer to her hometown. If Susan Smith had been born in another era, she might have been a con artist on Wall Street instead of a headline on court TV. In 2024, Susan Smith was up for parole, and just like 30 years ago, she makes national headlines. Susan Smith's attorney, Tommy Thomas, told the parole board this case is about the dangers of untreated mental health. He said Susan Smith had undiagnosed depression after her second son was born. Thomas highlighted that she has no prior criminal history, and he said if she's paroled, she'd live with her brother. Susan addresses the board.
I know that what I did was so horrible. And I would give anything if I could go back and change it.
And I love Michael and Alex with all my heart.
But it seemed, even after 30 years, there were people who have not forgotten and came forward to ask to deny parole. First, Susan's ex-husband, David Smith, was emotional as he asked the board to deny parole.
This wasn't a tragic mistake. She purposely meant to end their life. He changed my life for the rest of my life that night.
David's current wife, Tiffany, also asked the board to deny parole. One by one, others came forward, asking the board to deny parole. And lastly, Tommy Pope, the prosecutor, asked the board to deny parole, saying, "Susan has always focused on Susan. She made a horrible, horrible choice to choose a man over her family."
On behalf of this family, on behalf of justice and the justice for this case, it's not about her behavior or what she would do when getting out, but I know one of your criteria is the nature of the crime and whether the punishment is there. And I would submit for the crime she committed, the action she committed, that punishment has not been achieved yet.
After some deliberation, the board made its decision. They unanimously denied Susan Smith's parole.
Wow, what a heartbreaking story. This story takes the phrase, "I will kill for love," to a whole new level. I must admit, I dropped a couple of tears when the story got to the part about the death of the boys. Well, you can't stop now. Go on to the next story. I promise you, it'll give you the heebie-jeebies.